Hey, everybody, it's Scott Steehn with winnersandwhiners.com coming to you with our baseball edition. We did football here a couple weeks ago, and we'll be back to the NFL next week as we get ready for the NFL draft. But today, we're going to talk a little baseball. We're going to start and go through each of our divisions. Figure we have about 6 days here till Saturday, and we have 6 divisions. At least that's the way it stands right now. And to talk about the craziness that is baseball in general right now, and break down the division by division and see what we think is going to happen, I've got 2 of the best with me. We're going to bring him in all the way from Clarksdale, Mississippi. One of our newest additions here, and we are quite thrilled to have him. Heck of a writer and heck of a nice guy. It is Will Moorman. We call him Winning Willy. Willy, how are you today, sir?
Well, I'm here. It's great to be back on, talk a little baseball.
You're not having the opportunity to win as much these days, as there's not much to bet on. We can, I guess, we can bet on the number of racist things that NASCAR drivers say. The over/under total there. Scott, are you a NASCAR fan? We got Scott Reichel here, my partner in crime, all the way from Long Island, New York. Scott, were you watching the NASCAR race on Saturday night when?
I can't say that I was, but I'm sure it was more entertaining than the horse competition on ESPN on Sunday. So that's my thoughts on that.
I wondered how I saw how that was going. I got to admit, I was doing some family stuff for Easter. I didn't get to see the horse competition. Are you saying it wasn't engaging, thrilling, something you would? Could you bet on it?
You actually could for a little while, but then a couple of books realized similarly to the 2K tournament that it was pre-recorded, so they took off the betting lines. I'd say about a day in advance or so. Really, I tried to watch a bit of it. It just wasn't great. A lot of people had some issues specifically with the way that it was recorded. You had people recording it from basically their iPhones, and it just kept cutting out. So half the time you saw them say that they were going to do a shot with very bad audio, and then it would lag out, and you would see the ball either already go in the hoop or hit the rim. So you wouldn't even see the thing half the time. It was really just, I'd say it was a fail. I'd probably give it a D- if I was grading the thing.
Oh, that sounds awful. All right.
It was. And you got 2 more rounds of it. So, stay excited for that, I guess.
And we talk a little bit between us about what we're doing to get through this. I'd like to hear some comments from the people out there. We haven't had a lot of commenters, and I'd like to know what you guys are doing. What are you finding other things to bet on? Are you finding other things to take up your time? And I'm going to be honest, based on the number of views, people are definitely finding other things to do other than engage in sports betting content. It's not surprising, but I'm just kind of wondering for the folks out there, what are you guys doing to fill your time? More family time? Are you learning to play guitar? Are you learning to speak German? For something that was always on your list? Are you getting those bucket list projects done around the house and things that you always told your wife if you had enough time you'd do them? Jokes on you. Now you got to do stuff. So, Scott, what are you doing? I know you're playing online poker. You're trying to watch a movie a day. What did you see yesterday? Did you get to watch a movie?
Yes, I did. I actually watched The Other Guys. It was that private detective movie with Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe. It was actually pretty funny. I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty good.
Good. You would recommend?
Yeah. I mean, it's I don't want to say it's a time period piece, but it's supposed to take place in the 70s. So they really commit to the outfits and the hairstyles and the cars. So I kind of respected the effort they put in. But overall, I thought it was pretty funny. I was pleasantly surprised.
Outstanding. Willie, how are you staying busy down there in Mississippi?
Well, I've dove into the esports scene pretty deeply. League of Legends, Counter-Strike.
Yes, I actually saw that video you had the other day on League of Legends. It was solid stuff. I'd recommend that the viewers check it out.
Now, Willie, are you do you play yourself?
No, I'm still, I guess you could say, learning the ins and outs of the game as much, but I've really figured out sort of from a fantasy perspective how to figure out, who to play, who's good, who's not.
Now, the big question is, have you been making money on it?
Yes, actually. Not so much with League of Legends. I'm kind of staying afloat and breaking even, but Counter-Strike, I have figured out a formula there, a mathematic formula, and it's been working. I've seen success with it.
There you go, everybody. So if you're looking for something to put a little action on, something that won't bore you to tears, that shot with your phone, I imagine it looks a lot like it did before the virus, which was, it's all virtual world anyway. So if you're interested, definitely check out Willie's content. Fantastic writer. I haven't read your esports stuff, but I know that all your other stuff is very, very well written and very well researched. So definitely check out Winning Willy as far as esports go. All right, guys, let's turn our attention to baseball here. And before the show, we were talking about the difficulty of just this task in and of itself about ranking the teams, and what we're going to take a look at, whether we're going to take a look at win totals, which most likely are irrelevant. I do have the old posted win totals just to give us a little bit of a gauge, but Scott tells us that on DraftKings they've now gone to a win percentage, which will obviously not change based on the number of games that are played, whether it be at 150, 162, 100. Now, of course, the differences, and we'll delve into this a little bit before we start the preview. We don't really know even what the divisions are going to look like. They could absolutely do a one-year realignment as the Arizona-Florida schedule has been floated. I know a couple of other plans out there. Scott, what do you think the best way to just rank these teams? We're just going to go through as if there would be an actual season. We'll talk a little bit about their strengths, weaknesses, et cetera, and maybe just kind of shy away from win totals. Is that kind of the direction you're thinking here today?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds about right to me. I mean, you could still rank the teams as if, it was a regular division. You could just talk about power ranking wise on who's the best team in the division, who's the worst, etc. The issue you're going to have running it with win totals isn't even based on the percentage and the, compared to the regular win totals, which of course doesn't help. But I think the bigger issue is you don't even know what the schedule looks like. So it's kind of tough to start looking at, especially within a bridge season, because if you're going to be cutting some games or going to be realigning the division, you might barely match up with any teams in the NL East that you normally would because they have a different spring training location. So that kind of is a separate, can of worms in itself. So that definitely might deter some people from betting. But at the same point, if you still believe that there's going to be 100-plus games and you still think that this team is one of the, for example, top 10 teams in the league or so, it might not fully matter who they're going to play, especially since home field is going to be irrelevant. So you might end up finding more success actually just betting the better team, since it will pretty much be on a neutral site with no fans present. So there are a couple of ways to look at it with regard to some pros and cons of this new system. You can kind of break it down any way you want. I personally think we should just go by how we rank the teams in the division and then work from there. But
now, Willie, here's the part that surprises me is even though you can't bet win totals anymore, you can still get a bet down on a future. And the reason I think that's interesting is you have teams like the Giants, the Diamondbacks, the Colorado Rockies that are out there stuck with the Dodgers. So obviously they're prohibitive favorites to win the National League because the thinking is they're at best going to be involved in a one-game playoff that no one is going to overtake the Dodgers. So might there be a little value taking some teams from divisions where normally they wouldn't have a shot because of some high quality at the top, that maybe when everything gets shuffled, maybe they're not with the Dodgers in a division. Do you see any value there, Willie?
Well, I think the NL Central and NL East would be great examples of that just because of how deep they are. It's not necessarily quite a top-heavy division, so much to speak, such as, like you mentioned, the West Division with the Dodgers.
Yeah, I think those divisions are more mid-heavy where they have a lot of teams that are right there. And then those should be, well, we'll see what happens. But they would have been great races, a lot of fun to watch over the season. So let's start with one of those. Let's start with the National League East. And right there we have the Braves. The Braves fantastic in the regular season, not so much in the playoffs. In fact, they were going to try to advance past the division series for the first time since 2001. Scott, they made some major additions there. They brought in a fine closer in Will Smith, brought in Cole Hamels, they brought in Marcell Ozuna. Now they are going to miss Josh Donaldson, but the Braves still the class of the NL East. Do you agree?
For me, yeah. I mean, we covered yesterday, not yesterday, but a couple days ago on our MLB overview video, and we both thought there was some value on the Braves to win the NL at plus 800. I love this overall roster. I thought the main concern was the pitching staff. Donaldson is a great player, and there's no way around it. At the end of the day, they didn't want to pay him long term. Camargo is an okay third baseman. He's definitely a downgrade, but at the end of the day, I really love what the Braves did with the bullpen and the starting pitching. You mentioned Cole Hamels. You still got Fultonewicz, who missed a bit of the season last year before regaining form late. In the bullpen, you still have Melanson and Will Smith as the deep relievers. You got Darren O'Day, who's still a very solid reliever. They kept the bulk of the team intact. I really love the overall roster. I think they're by far the best team in the division. We're going to get to it in a sec, but if you have to talk about who the second best team is in the division, they probably got worse during the offseason, in my opinion. So based on that, I think the Braves are probably the second best team in the National League. And for that reason, win totals are not win percentage-wise. I probably would take the over regardless, and I probably would bet on them to win the division. At currently, the NL East division price on DraftKings is plus 200. You can probably find different lines if you shop around. I think they're the class of the NL East. So,
Willie, is Freddie Freeman one of the most overlooked players in the National League? All you hear about is who they brought in, Marcell Ozuna, and you hear about Acuna. Everybody kind of forgets old Freddie. He did have to see his average dip below 300 for the first time since 2015 last year, but he had career highs in home runs with 38 and runs with 113. Is Freddie Freeman? Is he still got it going on down there in Atlanta?
Well, I think he's in a position now where he doesn't have to be the forefront of the team anymore. He can kind of let other people help him out now because they've given him so many other weapons around him on the team. It's not like he was when he first got there when, he had to be the man or else they weren't going to win ball games.
Right. And that is good. That's always a good thing when they surround you with talent and give you a much better chance to win as they have right now. All right, Willie, let's move on. Take a look at the world champion. By the way, the pre-Corona win total posted on the Braves was 92 after going 97 and 65 last year. Guys, just to put it out there, do you think there's going to be a drop-off in performance, a 5-game drop-off, if you will, in performance from the Braves, or is that kind of a low win total looking at this team?
Well, something that's worth mentioning is that the DraftKings win percentage is 56%.
So assuming that's what that comes out to, by the way. 50%.
Correct. So what I was saying is that the issue you have with betting win totals now is that if you don't get 162 games, then your whole bet's canceled anyway, and you pretty much wasted your time.
I understand. We're just kind of using it as a marker, just kind of using it.
No. I agree. I was just saying that at 56, I still like the over. I mean, assuming that you're going to play 100 games or so, I still think the Braves are going to win over 56 games. I just think they're the best team in the division by a wide margin. Now, I know that the rest of the division, with the exception of the Marlins, is definitely not that bad. I think that they're around average or slightly above average. But going through the overall roster, I just think the Braves are arguably a top 3, top 4 team in the entire league. So I would personally take the over.
You agree with that, Willie?
Yes, I do. I think they did a good job of replacing everything that they lost this offseason. And they should be primed for another good run this year.
Good. All right. So let's take a look at the overachievers in that division, and the entire league, for that matter, is the Washington Nationals, as they ended up being your world's champions after 2 fantastic comebacks in the League Championship Series and the World Series. They finished 93 and 69. Vegas looking for regression for them. The old win total, 89.5%. Scott, what do they have in percentage-wise?
Sorry, just pulling that up for a sec. The Nationals have 55%.
55%, so just a little bit worse than the Braves. Willie, the Nats, they're really all about the pitching. Max Scherzer, Steven Strasburg, Pat Corbin, and a resurgent Anibal Sanchez accounted for 123 starts, 749 innings with 866 strikeouts, and a 3.33 ERA. Not too shabby. Willie, is this team going to go as far as the pitching takes them, or are they going to fall down on the offensive side?
I really don't know how I feel about this team this year because losing Anthony Rendon he should be a huge loss to this lineup. Of course, we never know. Maybe Starlin Castro, who they brought in to replace him, maybe he continues to see that kind of consistent role that he's played. But I think that losing Rendon's really going to hurt them. And then they also lost Gerardo Parra, too, who didn't really contribute on the field so much, but the fans loved him, which I think kind of takes away from the chemistry of the team a little bit.
Agreed. Scott, they brought in a couple of guys that tried to shore that up. They brought in Starlin Castro. They brought in Eric Dames. They got a lot of guys that have all of a sudden gotten kind of old in the tooth there. They've got Asdrubal Cabrera is 34, Howie Kendrick 36, Ryan Zimmerman 35. This team is all of a sudden got old, and I know a couple of those pitchers, they're not young either. Is the door starting to close? Is the window starting to close for the Washington Nationals here?
Well, I think a good point is asking how long the window is actually open, because they kept underachieving for years, then they randomly won a World Series. So I'm kind of curious how long the window is actually open for. I'm happy they got one. If you look at the overall team, though, I'm going to take the under. I actually think that there's going to be regression here. Even though I love the rotation, the issues still remain the same in the sense that the main issue they had last season was the bullpen. And even though the bullpen pieced it together for a little while, at least in the playoffs, it also had to do with the fact that they also were throwing Corbin and some other starting pitchers into relief appearances just to actually hide how bad the bullpen was, which ended up coming in. And even though they picked up Will Harris, solid reliever out of Houston, I still don't like the bullpen. Doolittle's been hit or miss. He's good in the playoffs, but Daniel Hudson was the same way. Harris is good. Rainey's not that great. Suaro's not good. Elias isn't that great, and Guerra's not good either. So I don't really trust the bullpen. And if you look at the actual if you look at the infield, Eric Thames, he's pretty good as a power hitter. Doesn't really get on base that much in terms of average. I think that that's a bit of a downgrade. I'm also assuming that he's going to be starting over Zimmerman, which can remain to be seen because Zimmerman's getting up there in years. You got Starlin Castro. I've never really been a Castro guy. I don't think he's really an amazing player by any means. He hits decently for average, pretty below average fielder, and he's not really a great base runner. I think he's okay at best. I think Howie Kendrick's better than him, so I think Howie Kendrick probably should start. But either or, the main issue I have is that Juan Soto is such a good player, but now that Rendon's out of the lineup, I don't really know why anybody would pitch to Soto in the first place. He's clearly better than everyone else on the active roster. I think teams will probably pitch around him, force other people to beat him, and I just don't see that happening. I think if you're getting Thames or Castro to play support for Soto, I think you should pretty much walk Soto every time. And I think for that reason, I think you should see the offense take a little bit of a step back. The rotation should still continue to be one of the best in the entire league, especially after signing Strasburg to that massive contract. But for me, I think the Rendon loss is too huge, and I still have massive questions about the bullpen. So for me, I'm going to take the under.
You know, kind of lost in the fun last year of the Washington Nationals and their run was the fact that, Juan Soto had a fantastic season. He hit 34 home runs, 401 OBP. But him and Victor Robles were really the only players to have a better 2019 than they did 2018. So this was, in many ways, a team that underachieved on offense, and that, certainly could occur. The same pattern could occur this year. Especially as you talked about one of the more underrated factors in the MLB about who surrounds the star players, who hits in front of them, who hits behind them. It dictates a lot of what they're going to see as far as the pitching repertoire goes.
I'm just asking, who do you think would actually back up Soto in this situation? You're actually looking at potentially Starlin Castro.
Yeah, I mean that's you're exactly right. You've got a bunch of bad options or mediocre options, and I think it's going to be Castro. And I'm with you. I've always thought he's been one of the classic underachievers when he was with the Cubs. So I don't know. I don't know what. I don't see a second line. I see any kind of injuries to this team. I think they take a significant step backwards with whoever backs them up on the bench, and that includes the pitching staff as well. And Strasburg has struggled to stay healthy throughout his career.
Well, so is Scherzer. Scherzer also got injured in the second half of last year.
Yeah, Scherzer's generally been more of a horse, but he did get hurt last year. Well, you wonder if that's a harbinger of things to come.
Yeah, well, he's also been a workhorse, but at the same point, he also has so much mileage on his shoulders now because he's been pitching for so long, and he's been given these massive innings over the course of his entire career, even with Detroit, and these long playoff runs and stuff like that.
Right.
At some point, I know Scherzer's one of the best pitchers of all time. You got to start wondering when he's going to decline because his arm might not be able to handle that much anymore. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Nationals potentially limit his workload in future years to try to keep him healthy for the postseason, which could be an issue because they might not make it to the postseason in future years. But that is definitely worth keeping in mind. Just because you were the best pitcher in baseball for almost a decade doesn't mean that you're going to be able to continue that type of performance in the future.
Very true. And, of course, now you do have to keep in mind, of course, that Max Scherzer is a graduate of the University of Missouri. So that means he is extra tough. And if anyone can do it, it is someone that played for MIZZOU.
So are you also leaning to the under on that one?
Yeah, I think there's going to be regression. I think they had their fun, and it's very difficult it's very difficult for those teams that are out of the upper tax bracket, if you will, in the MLB to keep their run going for consecutive years. The Royals ran into it in 2015 after they won the World Series. They were unable to keep the core together there, and you just don't have the resources. They gave they gave Rendon. The Angels did 7 years, $245 million. I mean, you just as you just can't compete with that, especially with going to having to pay your pitchers like the Nationals do. So,
well, a separate question. I actually just wanted to open it up for food for thought. Do you believe in the championship hangover theory, or no?
Not in and of itself. I think it's more about the makeup of the team, and I think it's about what happens after that championship and who's able to get paid, who's able to make more money elsewhere. I don't think per se there's a championship hangover. I think these guys are pros, and I think personally, I think it worked. I think it may work the other way. I think they get a little taste of it, and I think maybe they're excited to get there again. I don't know. Willie, what do you think?
Well, I think, like you said, there's two big questions about this team, and I personally will not put any kind of money on this until I see how things are going. It's going to be how that pitching staff responds this year, because as you mentioned, they are aging, and it's also going to be how well the lineup responds without Anthony Rendon in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Any kind of championship hangover for this team where they're not as hungry as they were last year?
I'm like you. I really don't believe in that so much. Just because, like you say, it depends on how the team itself is made up. And when you lose pieces from a team, there may have been rifts in the locker room. There's a lot behind the scenes. We really just don't know.
Absolutely. This wasn't a team that dominated the season. I mean, they were in late May, they were 19-31 after the All-Star break. They were never closer than 4 games to the Braves. So, this championship, it really, as much as it can these days, it really did kind of come out of nowhere for the Nats. It was really kind of a glorious, glorious run there, where they were able to top the Braves and the Astros. So, fun. I would like to see a World Series. Well, first of all, I'd like to see a World Series this year, but I would love it for it to be as entertaining as last year's was, with much less banging on trash cans, probably. Scott, let's move on to team up there in your neck of the woods. Let's talk about those New York Metropolitans. They did go 86-76 last year. The word on the street has them right around that same number. The pre-virus win total for them was 86.5, which I'm no math major. I'm going to say that's somewhere around 51%. No, I'm sorry. It's probably closer to
53,
54. What do you think? They had a big subtraction as Noah Syndergaard has to undergo a Tommy John surgery this year. He is, of course, out. That leaves them with a rotation of Jacob deGrom. Not too shabby. Marcus Stroman, who certainly had a lot of fine moments for Toronto last year. Rick Porcello, remember him when he was good? That was a fun 5 months. And they brought in Michael Wacha from St. Louis, and of course they still have poor old Steven Matz on the staff. Any chance here? They brought in Dylan Betances to help shore up the bullpen a little bit. They brought in Jake Marisnick to play center field. Scotty, what do you think? Are the Mets just stuck in the wrong place at the wrong time?
Well, I think it's very tough, especially during such a busy offseason, just based on how the season's projected. I feel like it's going to be very tough for new managers to make a full assessment of their players when there's an abridged spring training, and you're going to probably have to play in a neutral site in a shortened season. So I'm a bit concerned with the Mets because they have a new manager who might not be as familiar with all the players as they probably should be, and the lack of preparation time definitely isn't going to do them any favors. Now, when talking about the Mets and the breakdown, of course, with Syndergaard healthy, I probably would have taken the over because that rotation is fantastic, the lineup's decent, and I think they probably would have been able to win around 55% of their games or so. Now I'm a little bit more skeptical. I have no interest in actually playing this number at 53%, but for me, I'm probably going to lean to the under. Even though this rotation without Syndergaard is still decent, deGrom, of course, one of the best pitchers in the league. Stroman's pretty good. Porcello, even though he wasn't great last year, he still won an AL Cy Young Award winner, so he is an AL Cy Young Award winner, so he does have some potential. Matz has been okay, but he has some injury issues. He was terrible on the road last year. And Wacha's been hit or miss, but he has some potential. So the rotation is still decent. I wouldn't say that the rotation is suddenly terrible. Definitely would have been a lot better with Syndergaard there. But I still have massive issues with this bullpen. And I think that's the main issue that this team has. I know that Betances is solid. He's also coming in off a serious injury, so you got to wonder how effective he will be. But, I mean, your closer is still Edwin Diaz, and I can't trust you to win games if you're going to be up by 1 run in the 9th. I don't want to be covering my face with a towel or with a hat because I'm afraid of you choking it again. Edwin Diaz should not be a closer in the MLB. It's just the way it is, and nothing that he showed last season proves that he deserves a second chance.
Go ahead.
Okay. So what I was going to say is that's definitely the issue you run into with the Mets is that even if they hold the leads, you can't trust them because they choked I'd say it was either the most leads or the second most leads late in games last season. So I don't really trust them. But the lineup itself, especially if Cespedes is able to come back healthy, that definitely is a boost to the lineup, assuming that he's anywhere near the same player that he used to be. I actually like the Mets lineup with the emergence of Alonso and Robinson Cano expected to return from injury, which cut his season short last year. I like the overall lineup. I think the rotation is decent, but I think losing Syndergaard and that bullpen is definitely concerning with a new manager at the helm. I'd slight lean to the under. I have no interest in playing this, but that would be my thoughts on the actual team.
Yeah, it's really even a new manager after they were
the Beltran fiasco. Yeah,
Carlos Beltran was unable to really even take the reins there after he got embroiled in the controversy down there in Houston, and they brought in Rojas, who's a veteran manager throughout their system. Probably has a lot more experience than Beltran. The problem is, like you said, he's just coming to the party a little bit late. Scott, Willie, they also lost Zach Wheeler out of that rotation. Zach Wheeler, never a superstar, but he definitely eats innings. He made 60 starts over 2 years, 6.28 innings per start. What they really need is a bounce back year from Jared Familia. Any shot of that happening there to help that bullpen out, Willie?
Well, I actually feel much more strong about this team than Scott, and in the opposite direction. This Mets team just has fade them to me, just because I appreciate the effort in the additions, but Porcello and Waka they've never been standout pitchers. They lost Todd Frazier, and that was a huge piece of their lineup. I'm just wondering who's going to score runs for them, even if the pitching is there this year.
So you think Cespedes is done?
Yes.
All right. Well, that's a hot take. I mean, and he has had trouble staying healthy throughout his career, especially with the Mets. And Porcello, I'm kind of with Willie on this. Since Porcello won the Cy Young, he's had 3 seasons, and his ERA over that
not good
has been almost 5. It's been 4.79. Of course, pitching there in Fenway Park kind of tends to skew pitcher stats. But Porcello has not been good since really winning the Cy Young there out of the blue. So Willie, you would definitely take the under on that team, regardless whether it's done in a total or a percentage. However they put it out there, you're going low.
All the way.
All right, good. Well, Willie, let's talk about the Phillies.
Scott, what do you think about the Mets?
You know what? I think there are going to be too many games there. If they keep the divisions together, I think there's too much quality competition in the NL East.
Well, even if they don't keep the divisions, they have one of the harder divisions in the new system as well. So that definitely is something worth keeping in mind. So some teams
I'm talking about the Arizona-Florida split.
Yeah, they have one of the harder divisions in that league as well, in that setup as well. So that is something that's worth keeping in mind. How whether or not they're in the NL East or they're in this new system, they might end up under anyway because their schedule should be tough regardless. So that is something worth keeping in mind.
And what refresh me what they had there with the I know they're down there in Florida. What was their Florida division?
I got to have it in front of me, but I know that they were in the Red Sox division. So they had the Red Sox. I believe the Braves were in there as well.
Oh, boy.
And I think the Twins might have been in there. They had a really tough division. I'll pull it up, and I'll let you know when I can find it. But I remember that the Mets were definitely in one of the 2 hardest divisions in the new system.
Yeah, I'm leaning with Willie here. I think the competition's too strong. I think there's just the bullpen was so bad, and when you can't count on the bullpen to hold your lead, I just don't believe in you. I'm sorry. Too many other good teams out in that area. Let's take a look, Willie, at the Phillies. Phillies 500 last year, 81-81. The old win total was calling for them to improve by almost 5 games. They had to set it at 85.5. The Phillies have been the classic underachievers. as far as the free agent market goes. They spent $700 million the last 3 seasons to give the Phillies a little bit of hope. And this team has not had a winning season nor made the playoffs since 2011. They got rid of Gabe Kapler. They brought in Joe Girardi. Willie, any of that matter to you? Is this the time for the Phillies finally to break through and at least make the playoffs?
Well, that was a great addition that they made there at manager, but will it make any difference? That's the real good question there, because they did lose Maikel Franco, Cesar Hernandez, and all, as well as pitcher Drew Smiley. And the only signing that they made that was really worth noting was Didi Gregorius. So I'm really just – I don't know what to make of this team, because I want to see what the rest of their division is doing before I make a definite decision. But I've been leaning towards the under for this team for a while now.
Right. Yeah, I can't get behind this rotation. Now, that's where Zach Wheeler ended up going. And they gave Zach Wheeler 5 years, $118 million. And, of course, you've still got Aaron Nola there, which is a quality pitcher. But, man, this rotation really gets sketchy after those top 2 guys. I mean, you're looking at people like Vince Velasquez, Zach Eflin, Nick Pivetta. Eflin has looked okay, but I think Pivetta and Velasquez have been classic underachievers. Bryce Harper had a decent season out there in Philly. He looks a little better on defense. They brought in Andrew McCutchen. Quite possibly that he's done. He's going to be back now after an injury. It was actually very good for the Phillies last year in that leadoff role. He was hitting almost over 300 with an OBP in the 370s before he went down on June 3rd. And the Phillies were dreadful in the leadoff spot after he went down with just a sub 300 OBP the rest of the way. In fact, they were 29th in on-base percentage after June 3rd, after McCutchen went down. So with a healthy Andrew McCutchen, I don't know. Scott, any hope for this? Any hope for the Phillies?
Well, first of all, I actually looked up, just to backtrack, I looked up the Mets spring training or what the new proposed divisions would be. I said the Mets would be with the Red Sox and the Twins. I actually got that incorrect. They would be with, however, the Nationals, the Astros, the Cardinals, and the Marlins. So their division still would be pretty tough with the Astros, Nationals, and Cardinals in that division. So I mean, just to recap there. Now, for the Phillies, I kind of agree with everybody in the room here. I am not sold on this team whatsoever. They paid Zach Wheeler that much money. Is he worth that much money? No. I mean, he's had injury issues his entire career. I know that he is pretty good in terms of strikeouts, but based on ERA and just his ability to keep runners off the base paths, I'm not really impressed by that. He tends to walk some batters. It seems like he goes for a strikeout or bust approach at the plate, and that kind of is hit or miss, definitely, if he has even the slightest lack of control on any given day. But Nola and Wheeler are pretty good. Arrieta's coming off a serious injury as well. You got to wonder what he's going to be like. Eflin's okay. The rest is kind of unknown. I'm not a Pivetta guy. I don't think he's very good. And if you look at the lineup, I think it's okay, of course. Lineup's decent. But I think the main issue that we haven't really talked about is the bullpen. And I think you have to wonder, I roasted the Mets for having Edwin Diaz as their closer. And, of course, that's one of the worst closers in the league. Are you really sold on Hector Neris to be your closer for the regular season? I don't really think you should be. If you look at the rest of the bullpen, even though they got Anthony Swarzik, who's okay, I mean, you're going with Dominguez, Alvarez, Orano, Adam Morgan, and Swarzak. I'll pass personally. I'm not really a fan of any of those pitchers. I think Dominguez is okay, but he's still young. He's got some control issues. But if you're going into the ninth inning with a one-run lead and you have Neris coming into the game, I'm not exactly sold on your chances. So for that reason, even when they're winning the game, I'll be a little bit nervous. I'm going to lean to the under for that reason.
Yeah, and of course in the National League, it's the bullpen takes even a larger role as you start subbing for those pitchers there in the fifth and sixth inning. So it's you need more quality arms. You need more quality arms in that middle of the bullpen. And that it's just dreadful. And this is really an entire division of very bad bullpens. It just is. Okay, so we've got one more team. I guess apparently, according to what I read, they also play baseball in Miami. So we'll talk about the Marlins just a little bit. Marlins have been when they don't buy the World Series, they've been a pretty bad team, and they haven't bought a World Series for a few years now. 57-105 was their record last year. They were calling for some improvement for the Marlins. They were calling them to not lose 100 games out of 162, and 63.5 was the win percentage that I had for them. Scott, anything to like about the Marlins other than Sandy Alcantara? Brian Anderson looks like he might be a real player. They brought in Jonathan Villar and Jesus Aguilar. It's time for the kids to shine. Are they going to be able to make it?
I mean, what's not to like? They're only projected to lose 98 games this season instead of 100 plus. I mean, that's a huge step forward for this pro. No, I mean, all sarcasm aside, no. This team's going to be the worst team in the division. They'll be the worst team in the new division if they go with that system. This team isn't very good. I do think that the rotation does have some young pieces who could develop into some potentially capable starting pitchers over the next couple of years. But I think we all know that when the Marlins decided to ship off Ozuna and Yelich and Real Muto, this team didn't really care about the next 3 years. They kind of were just punting for the immediate future. They have a very solid farm staff, which is worth mentioning. And I think that you should see this team become a little bit more competitive down the road when those first-round picks actually develop. You're still a couple of years removed from that. This team pretty much decided we're going to fire sell everything in promotion for the next future, for the future. They have some young pieces here. At the end of the day, are the pieces going to suddenly translate into a massive improvement? No. I still think they're probably 2 years away, maybe 3 years away from winning 80 games or so to make a massive step forward. So for that reason, no. If you look at the rotation, I do like Caleb Smith. I think that Pablo Lopez has some potential. Yamamoto looked pretty good late in the year, along with Alcantara. But for me, Jesus Aguilar, he had one great year with the Brewers. That's pretty much it. Can't run the bases, can't play the field, and now he's still going to be forced to do both those things. No. For me, I'm going to take the under. It's an easy pass for me, and I think they're just the worst team in the division by far.
Willie, the frustrating thing about the Marlins, it has to be a Marlins fan, is not only have they, had a fire sale like Scott was saying on their players. They, got rid of Stanton, of course. They got rid of Yelich and Real Muto. But the guys they've received in return have been pretty classic underachievers so far. Jorge Alfaro, he swings at everything. Lewis Brinson is struggling to make contact in the minors. And it has to be killing them to see some of their old prospects like Luis Castillo and Chris Paddock really have breakout seasons last year. Willie, any hope for the Fish down there? They've made their they brought in the center field wall they moved it from 407 to 400, and right center to 399 to 387, bringing those in, trying to take advantage of the warning track power apparently that the Fish possess. Any shot for these guys? You see any future here before we all grow old?
Well, as Scott mentioned, the future looks good for them in the sense that they have a good farm system. But you would think that a team that only won 57 games would have made more moves during the winter. And, they were almost dormant this winter. The only player that even sticks out to me that they signed was Francisco Cervelli. And he's past his prime. You losing Starlin Castro is going to hurt that team, even though, as we touched on earlier, he's nothing just spectacular. He's not going to be that standout 30 home runs, 300 guy, but he's consistent. And I think that that's going to really hurt that lineup.
Yeah, like I said, they brought in Jonathan Villar, they brought in Jesus Aguilar. They brought in some veterans, but it's certainly not top shelf veterans. Anybody that's really going to make a big difference down there. I just, I know it's just too easy to discount it, but there's just really not much to like about this team. So Willie, let's have the rubber hit the road here. Why don't you rank the teams for me in the National League East from 1 to 5, the way you see them finishing?
Well, I like the Braves to win the division. I believe that the Nationals will probably still be second just because of their pitching staff. Third, I like the Phillies. I'm like I said earlier, I'm on the fade the Mets train, but they're gonna be above the Marlins in fourth, and then of course the Marlins are still gonna be in the cellar like always.
Right. Very good, Scott. How do you see it breaking down? I assume you have the Braves at the top also.
Well, it's kind of a bold call by me. I think the Braves are clearly going to win the division. I think that they're going to be the only team to make the playoffs, and I wouldn't be surprised to see all the other teams be somewhere around 500. I really think the Braves are going to run away with this division very early on. They're significantly better than everyone else. I'm not really sold on any of the other teams in the division. I think the Nationals are going to take a step back. I still think they're going to come in second, just based on the pitching staff. And even though their lineup is going to look a little bit worse without Rendon, or a lot bit worse, I think it's still good enough to keep this team in second place. So I'll take the Nationals in second. I actually like the Mets coming in third. I know that the new manager is a bit concerning, and losing Syndergaard definitely is a crucial blow. But I really think they have a much better roster than the Phillies from top to bottom. So for that reason, I'll take the Mets in third. I'll take the Phillies in fourth. A new manager can only take you so far. This team's rotation isn't that great. The bullpen's terrible. And the lineup is okay. I know Harper's an unbelievable player, but at the end of the day, they don't really have many other pieces. I know that Real Muto is good. I know that Hoskins is good. And if McCutchen is the same guy post-injury, then maybe you have a decent top of the lineup. I'm still not sold on the team. I think the Phillies will come in fourth, and I think the Marlins will finish in fifth with a wide margin. However, it is worth mentioning that the Marlins might benefit the most from the new system in the spring with the spring training format, because there might not be any fans there, and there are no fans that go to their games anyway.
No, they would be.
It is something worth keeping in mind. No, but actually, though, this team's going to be bad. I mean, there's no way around it. The Marlins aren't good.
Yeah, I think we're pretty much in agreement here. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to slide. I'll take the Braves, of course, to win the division. I will slide the Mets in front of the Nats. I worry about the age of this team. I worry about the health of that pitching staff, and I still worry about the bullpen. I think the Mets are going to surprise a few people. I'm not sure they're going to make the playoffs, but I do like the Mets in front of the Nats. I think the Nats slide to third, and I think we're all in agreement on the fourth and fifth place team of the Phillies and the Marlins. All right, guys. Well, 1 down, 5 to go. Very nicely done, gentlemen. Appreciate it as always. I hope everybody is out there having fun, staying safe, enjoying this family time as well. And Scott, any final words?
Yeah. If you are a little bit skeptical about the baseball season taking place in general, I do have good news for you. China actually resumed its baseball league the other day. They have no fans there. There's nobody in attendance, but they were playing some baseball games. So there is a potential chance that even though it does look relatively, I don't want to say bleak, but it doesn't look great at this point in time, it is still happening in China. And we've seen how the NBA responded to the Chinese Basketball Association shutting down, and that pretty much was the final nail in the coffin on the NBA season. The fact that baseball is around in China might be a good sign moving forward, so keep that in mind.
All right, good. We'll keep a good thought. Willie, anything down there from Mississippi? Any final words of wisdom?
Yeah, stay safe and stay sane throughout the hiatus. It's coming back soon.
Yeah, I think we're gonna see some sports here. I'm always a worrier. I'm paranoid by nature, so I'm probably a little more worried than you guys are. But I think they've got to figure out something here within the next 30 to 45 days. I think we'll have to return to start to return to some sense of normalcy. We'll see what happens there. So for myself, for Winning Willie, for Scott Reichel, we're wishing all you guys all the best. Of course, everybody stay home, stay healthy, and stay optimistic. All right, things are going to get better. Let's have some fun. In the meantime, we'll be back to talk tomorrow about the National League. Now let's go with the National League Central. Talk a little Reds and Cardinals, et cetera, et cetera. But until then, I'm Scott Steehn for all of us here at Winners and Winers. Thanks very much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care.